Welcome to Career Cafe, the podcast where we discuss all things career-related to help you thrive in the professional world. Today's episode, job searching, effective and ineffective ways to find a job. We'll go through everything you need to know to be successful in the job search process. Today, we have Brandon Street and Jerry Ross joining us, and moderator McKinley Hatch, myself. And Brandon and Jerry are both experts in this field. Can you, both of you, tell me why? Brandon, why don't you start?
Yeah, I'm happy to. So I've been working in career services for about 20 years now, and it's been a great career, but also a little eye-opening. You know, over the last 20 years, I learned a lot, not only about myself as a job searcher, but how to help others navigate this process of trying to find a job. So I'm excited about our conversation today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Brandon. Also, just a side note, Brandon is the best with dad jokes, so we might have a few of those slip into these episodes, which will be fun. Jerry, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're an expert.
I come from the business world, and I have about 7 years of corporate level recruiting behind me. I've also done multi-unit supervision units up to about 70 units at a time. So I've done countless interviews, resume reviews, and been on multiple hiring panels throughout the years.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, we're excited to dive into our first segment, effective job search strategies. So let's talk about that a little bit. I'd love to hear stories. I'm open to anything. Common mistakes that you see job seekers are making right now in today's world.
Yeah, I think just to kind of chime in first, one of the things I see that is most common is job seekers are typically looking for jobs the complete opposite way that employers are trying to find them. So what I mean by that is, people usually just jump onto something like Indeed. They'll apply for like 100 jobs and use the same resume to apply for every job. And really all they're doing is cross their fingers and going, I sure hope this works, right? I hope that someone calls me back. But we know the return rate on that is very low. I've seen anywhere from 4 to 6% as a number of return rate on that. And that means 4 to 6 jobs out of 100, you might get even just someone to return, an email or something about. So I don't know if your experience was different, Jerry, there. But I mean, we all know that people aren't looking to hire people through those systems first and foremost. I mean, the way they try to hire people is people they know first. Am I wrong, Jerry, or was that your experience?
I think you're absolutely right. And one of the things that stands out to me is there's countless places you could go work. Why do you want to work here? And I think really addressing that on your application and through your research process, you should have some sort of idea of the background of the company that you're applying for. Don't walk into your interview or your interaction shouldn't be cold. You should educate yourself a little bit on where are you applying to? What are those roles like? Can you find people in the community, whether it's LinkedIn or other places, to where you can get a little bit of job knowledge prior to that? Because the recruiter really wants to know, why are you in that building and not in another one? They don't want to just hire you because you are the one that called them back first. They want to truly make sure that you're a great fit for the position that they have.
Yeah, I think a good fit for the position and a good fit for the team. That it starts, on paper, typically, I'm just trying to find out, are you qualified for my job, right? That's the very first thing I want to know, are you qualified? But when I'm sending out one resume to every employer, it's very difficult for me as an employer to say, yeah, you look like a good candidate, right? In fact, most employers tell me I can spot a general resume from a mile away, right? Like, I know that you wrote this for every employer. So one of the pitfalls as we're talking about this is just writing this one resume you fan out, not getting to know the employers as you're talking about, Jerry, right? I mean, that's another pitfall. I think it's really, really important to find out how you fit the position, customize your resume for that job, and ensure that they know you're writing it to them. You're interested in that job. But it starts with understanding how you fit that company and how you fit that team, right?
Yeah. I work in 3 roles too. It's, do you meet the floor? Do you have the minimum qualifications for this job? The second thing we would look at would be, what can you add? What can you teach me that maybe I didn't know before you were here? And then lastly, culturally, do you fit? And that doesn't mean you have to be the same. That just means, can we take a team lunch together? Are you going to fit in with our team? Are you going to contribute culturally to who we are as a company?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. On another topic, just really quickly, one thing I'd also suggest it may be a pitfall is our digital footprint, right? Like, how do we represent ourselves on social media, the places they will find us? We know they're looking for you. When you apply for jobs, if they're at all interested, they are looking for you, right? I mean, Jerry, you're an employer. Did you ever look up anybody?
Off the record, absolutely. and most companies are going to have policies against this, right? At the time I was doing it, we hadn't quite evolved and we didn't have a written policy around it. And a lot of times people feel, well, this is my personal vision. You're right, but the company is hiring you as a person also,
Right.
and everything that comes along with that. So if companies have the opportunity to reach out and see who you are as a person to add to that cultural fit, you have to be aware that everything can be used against you. And even in positions where policy is against it, it's on you as the burden to prove it.
Yeah.
So just be really aware of what you put out there because it does represent you and it represents you forever. Even if you take it down, it's always there.
Agreed. And it's not just, I mean, we talked social media here, but I mean, even as simple as the voice message that you have on your phone, right? Like things like that. Remember, as you're applying for jobs, again, this whole, and I always say this job process really begins with one word, and that is trust. I want to know. I start with zero trust. I mean, when you send me a resume, you know what I mean? I'm just trying to figure out who you are. I don't know you. I don't trust you yet, right? The idea is as I go through this process, hopefully I can gain more and more trust where they want to hire me. But all of these things, social media, if we represent ourselves wrong, or our voice message or things like that, or even the email that we have could cause distrust along the way, which then is detrimental to us getting an interview, right? So we've got to be aware of those things. So I would say the last pitfall is, and we've talked about this a little bit, is what we call the apply and pray concept, right? Again, just putting things out there and there's no follow-up, there's no anything. You just hope that somebody gets a hold of you, right? And I think that's one of the most common ways people apply, but again, probably the less effective way to do that, or the least effective way to do that. But.
Yeah, that's really good insight. I once had a supervisor that was offering a job to somebody, and they called them, and their voicemail was them burping the ABCs. So they did not extend that offer. It was kind of funny, but definitely avoid those common pitfalls. Something I wanted to dive into next was asking about kind of job search goals and what that looks like. Is that important in the job process, and what does that look like for each individual person?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So I think, having your own goals as a job seeker is very important. It's important to understand what exactly am I looking for? Why do I want this job? Why do I want to work for this company even, right? Again, this applying and pray concept, when we just look at, and this is, I know a lot of job seekers who do this, they go and find jobs, and the first thing they look for is what line? Salary. How much am I going to make of this job? Oh, that looks like pretty good. I'm going to apply, right? But honestly, the first things we should be looking at is, what are the duties? How do I align with this job, again, as we're talking about? But being intentional and understanding, why do I want to work in this industry? Why do I want to work for this company? That allows you the ability not only to customize your resume, but to write a cover letter. And when a cover letter that shows you're a good candidate, but also, again, that passion to want to work for them. And then when you get an interview, obviously that's your chance to then sell why you want to work for that company and be genuine in that reason, right?
Yeah. And I think part of that is also setting some time aside for your job search and kind of think in the mindset of a recruiter, right? So I recall a time where I took a 3-day weekend off after we posted an Indeed ad, and I came back and I had 1,400 resumes in my inbox.
Wow.
Can you imagine what a 1,400 Monday morning looks like? So when you're thinking about the time that you're setting aside for your job search, understand Monday morning, they've got probably 3 days worth of emails to read. You are mixed in with that 1,400. Friday afternoon, I'll be honest, there were times I was thinking about my weekend. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, those are really prime real estate for your job search time. And can you set those things aside regularly? And we were talking about this apply and pray concept also. I like to talk to people about the 3 ways that we can reach out. Email, it's fantastic. How many are you going to get today, Brandon?
Well, I'm not going to get, what'd you say, 1,400? I'm not going to get that many emails. But I'll tell you, today I'm going to get 100.
You're going to get 100,
Yeah.
right? So when you email, you are one of 100 inside of that. How many times is your phone going to ring and there's going to be someone on the other end of it?
Right. Yeah.
Couple.
Yep.
And then lastly, how many times is somebody going to walk into your door saying, I've already applied to your position, I'm in my fancy clothes, here's my resume, which is a Post-it note of me to where if you walk away and you have some sort of distraction or other things, it's a written down copy of who you are, to where they always know that person that stopped by with their resume was really interested in this position. So those are a couple of ways that I personally talk about to get past that apply and pray. And how can you rise yourself to the top end of the application process is through those three things.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, obviously, you've got to be aware of what the employer is going to allow. Some people aren't going to allow you to come into their office per se. But again, knowing the employer and understanding the best way to apply. And then, I mean, if it's an email, it's an email. That hopefully that can set you apart. If it's a call, it's a call. I've had people stop by my office, and I love it, right? I love seeing people's faces. I know they're interested and genuine about wanting our job, you know, and that excites me, helps me remember them when I'm looking at their application. So
Right. So we talk about the best ways to get in front of the employer, right? We've talked about email and phone might be a little busy. What sets them apart? Maybe going in person, doing those info interviews, those kinds of things. So let's talk about bringing it back to finding the job. What is the number one way people find the job? You know, we're talking about the job search. Once we get into the door, that's great, but how do they find a good job? What's the number one way they do that?
And Brandon, you brought up trust. And when I was out looking for the next level of talent, the first place that I would look would be internal.
yeah, absolutely.
It's the person that you trust. It's the person that you've worked with. Now, how can you elevate that before you need it? How can you build that trust before the position is open? How can you be the example of that worker to where when a position is opened, you're just instinctively the one that they thought of when they did it? And how can you work those networking edges while you're in your current position to help you promote to the next one?
Yeah.
I really recommend being a model employee and kind of always working that networking edge, seeing what you can do to grow as a person while being realistic inside of that.
Yeah, I mean, you make some good points there. Like, I know there's listeners out there right now that are saying this to us right now. Yeah, networking is great. I don't know anybody at that company. So I get students who ask me this, or alumni of SCU who ask me this constantly, and that is, how do I get within those inner network? Well, the fact is you need to, right? That is number one. But how do I do that? There's lots of ways to be able to break into a network, and it starts with meeting people where they are. Right. And so it may be, obviously, there's lots of ways like internships. I can do an internship for a company I want to work for. Right. I can volunteer at places I know company representatives will be. I can take part of conferences or professional associations where I know they're part of. I can jump on LinkedIn and start connecting with people on there. Maybe people I already have some type of connection if they went to the same school as I did, or they're from the same areas, finding natural bridges with people, right? Or, you could just reach out and tell people, I'm interested in learning more about your company. Are you willing to talk with me for 15 minutes? So there's lots of ways to do that, but you have to be actively engaged in that, right? It's opposite of, apply and pray. It's apply and do is what it really is. And you need to be actively engaged in trying to find people that could connect you to eventually to the right people, right?
Yeah.
And I like to say networking doesn't happen by accident. We have to intentionally go out and find people that we can build those resources for the time that we need them, and also help them. There's going to be times when you're out networking and maybe your company has positions that you want to fill, and you can also offer the opposite backwards. But always make sure that we're using those connections in a way that we can help in the future, whether you're aiding or whether you're using them. Figure out ways to collect the data from them, whether it's a phone number, whether it's an email address, whether it's a LinkedIn connection. I know personally, I've always collected things whenever I would go to a conference, go to a meeting, interact with people that were new. I would send out a message with my LinkedIn connection, letting them know that who I was. And there was a time when I got laid off during COVID. And I'll be honest, I moped around the house for a couple of days. And then I changed my LinkedIn profile to seeking new opportunities. And a few days later, I had multiple offers from people that I had made those connections with over the years. So building those connections before you need them is really a key in the job search networking process.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys talked about networking. We're going to dive more into that in the next episode. So listeners, you got to tune in next episode. Let's talk about kind of along the same lines of networking, building advocates for you. That's a huge part of networking, but what does that look like, and why should people be building advocates for them?
And I love that term, advocates. That's something I learned in the book 2 Hour Job Search, which I really love. You should check it out. But that term, advocates, it puts it a little more personalized. But let me tell you, I just want to give you a few tools that could be helpful for you as you're trying to develop advocates. So we talk about LinkedIn. What a great tool that is. It's designed to help you develop advocates naturally. But on there, some of our listeners may not be aware that there are a couple of tools that specifically will get you inside of the network of an employer. One of those is if you go to the company site, if you just search the company on LinkedIn and you click on people, it will have all the people that are on LinkedIn that work for that company. What a great place to start. You can see who is actually working there and see if you can find connections. Also, the alumni tool in LinkedIn. If you go to your university on LinkedIn and you go to the alumni tool, you can find alumni, all the alumni. So if they've associated themselves with your university as graduating from there, you can find them, but also filter them, right? You can filter them by where they work, what they studied, lots of things to get down to a handful of alumni who may be in the area or even work for the company you want to. There's your natural bridge. I mean, you've already got a connection to people you can say, hey, fellow T-Bird, right, in our case. Hey, fellow T-Bird, I know we didn't graduate together, but I see you graduated in the same area I did, and now you're working for this company. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit about, I've been interested in your company for a while, if you can tell me a little bit about it, right?
I also love the LinkedIn tool. When you click the company page and then click the people, it will show you, could there be other veterans that have worked there? Could there be alumni? It also gives you a location of where do they work. So maybe you're trying to find people that work inside of your area. And I love getting a feel for them. Hey, I'm looking to apply for your position. Can you tell me what do you love about your job? How much do you enjoy the culture of what's there? You can establish that connection. We've all heard it's not what you know, it's who you know. So how can you find that through the job search function using that tool? It's great.
Absolutely. But let me just give you this piece. If you're a student listening, this does not begin when you're a senior. All right. Networking should begin as you go to college, right? I mean, every day you're sitting by other students and you never know where they're going to be. You never know if they're going to be a CEO. You never know if they're going to be, heavens, they may be your boss in the future, right? You never know who they're going to be. But also professors, staff, other alumni that come to campus, right? Like all these individuals could be an advocate for you in the future as you naturally build, these advocates.
Yeah, fellow interns, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I remember when I was doing my internships in college, I have a great relationship with the other intern 1 and intern 2, and it turned into a great relationship. And I know that if I ever reached out to her, as she works in a really cool role now, that, I'd be interested in, I could always reach out to her. And I think that's really cool that those relationships and those advocates really do matter. And I want to touch on internships just because I think that's really important in building advocates as well. And just like we're all advocates for each other, you'd hope, your colleagues. Cool. Well, thanks for touching on advocates. I thought that was an important piece that we wanted to talk about. I wanted to dive into online job boards and how to navigate them because like we talked about, Pull and Pray or all of these things, you go on LinkedIn, you go on Indeed, Handshake, all of these places that have jobs posted. People are just diving right into them. They don't know where to start, or maybe they think they know, but they don't. So let's talk about that. How do you guys recommend students, alumni, all of our listeners go about online job boards?
Yeah, that's a really good question because, I know we talked about oftentimes we apply opposite of the way that employers are looking. I'm not discouraging by any means these systems that have lots of jobs on them. This is a great place to discover open jobs, right? So I'm not discouraging those by any means. I'm suggesting that we use those to find those jobs, but maybe if there's another way to apply that would be a little bit more effective, we use that way to do that. And let me just give you an example. I know there's a book called What Color Is Your Parachute that had some research in there on again how employers look for employees and how people, job seekers, typically apply. At the very bottom of the rung was these third-party application systems like an Indeed, like a Monster, those types of job systems. But so even if they have the job posted there, see if the company has it posted on their own site, because we found that is even the percentage of getting hiring went up if you applied on their site rather than the third-party site. So that's even just a step up on that ladder, right? But again, a step up from there is that you're entering that get an advocate, find an advocate, right? And you go from there. But
I found some things with a third-party sites also. I've seen drastic changes in pay scale between looking at it on Indeed versus going to the company's direct site. And this also kind of falls into directions also. So sometimes you'll see something on Indeed and it's a great way, or one of the other job search sites. We keep using Indeed, but there's many others out there to direct us towards jobs. But then when you type in that company's website and go to their specific career page, I feel like that's the best place for you to find the facts of what that job is. And also the following instructions side. I feel like the job application process is the first step of, is this person detail oriented? Can they follow the directions that we give them? And it's your first opportunity to prove yourself inside of those roles, that you can follow directions, that you can do things correctly. When they're asking you for something, it's there. And I really prefer going directly to the site just to get the facts straight directly from the source.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One other point I want to make is, and a lot of individuals know the big companies. They know these big companies, Google, Walmart, Yahoo, whatever it might be. They know these big companies that they're like, yes, I want to work for them. But there's so many of these what we call hidden gems, kind of the in-between, between a startup and the big companies that so many individuals don't think about, right, that are out there. And so as you're looking for companies who do business in the industry you want to work in, look for those hidden gem companies, the ones that are the startup that are starting up and who are now kind of in the middle, right? Who we typically miss when we're looking for companies to apply to. Look for them, as you're doing your search. See who is in the industry you want to work for, and be deliberate in seeing what they have, how you would fit, and applying for those companies as well.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. Something I want to move on to was I guess the benefits of talking to the hiring managers once you get to that application phase. You've gone on Indeed, you've gone on Handshake, you've gone on these websites, these job boards, you've applied for jobs. Now, we talked about it earlier, the importance of getting in front of them, right? They're busy people. These hiring committees, the people that are on them, they're all often on several hiring committees, right? So how do you reach them? What would you recommend to students?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And typically what we recommend is, especially reaching out the first time, is if you are, see if they're willing to give you just a few minutes. Don't ask for a half hour of their time. Ask for 10 or 15 minutes. And if they grant you that time to talk to them, don't take any more than what you asked for, right? And come prepared. Come prepared with questions to ask, just questions that will help you better understand what they're looking for in a candidate. That's not necessarily the time to sell yourself either. They understand you're going to go through that process, but it's a great time to just, ask some questions. If they, want to get to know you more, or they offer to extend that, that's fine. But I usually will say at 10 or 15 minutes, whatever you've asked for them, once it gets to that time, you say, thank you so much for your time. I want to honor your time. But I think it's a good way to get in front by just looking for small chunks of time, which they feel like, oh, yeah, I could do that, right?
Absolutely. And I recommend within 48 hours of completing your application. I think to get it fresh, within 48 hours of filling out your application, you should make some sort of follow-up. And then I recommend once a week from there. You don't want to be a pain, but you also want to let them know that you truly are interested, and continue to follow up until they tell you that the position has been filled.
Yeah, this is really good advice. Thank you, Jerry and Brandon, for navigating us through the job search process, what that looks like today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to Career Cafe. We hope that you'll subscribe to our channel and share this podcast with your friends and fellow alumni. We wanted to encourage you to tune in to next week's episode about networking, building bridges, and the power of networking. We'll dive further into what networking is and how to navigate that. But we're signing off with a dad joke, of course because we have to do that. Yeah. So why don't you tell us your favorite?
Yes, I will. So McKinley, I just lost my job as a psychic, and I did not see that coming.
Oh, too good. Too good. Thanks, listeners. We'll see you next week.